Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two marvelous poets with us today, Kim Dower and Lester Graves Lennon. Kim will read first and then Lester. Thanks to Chaplain Yvonne Boyd. Kim Dower, City Poet Laureate of West Hollywood from October 2016 to October 2018, has published 6 highly acclaimed collections of poetry, all from Red Hen Press. What She Wants, poems on obsession, desire, despair, euphoria, 2025 was called, quote, witty, sultry, and thoughtful by the Washington Post. Her best-selling, I Wore This Dress Today for You, Mom, was an Eric Hoffler Book Award finalist, and Sunbathing on Tyrone Power's Grave won the 2020 Independent Publishers Book Award Gold Medal for Poetry. Kim teaches poetry workshops for the West Hollywood Library and Beyond Broke and lives with her family in West Hollywood. Here's a magnificent poet, Kim Dower.
Hi, thank you so much, Harry. How are you? Nice to be here, and always nice to be here on your wonderful show. So, I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read a selection from different books because I was feeling very nostalgic looking at the poems in my first collection, and I thought, I'm gonna read a couple of these. And there's a poem, but the first poem in my first book, Air Kissing on Mars, is called They Took the Mailbox Away. And it may actually be a little dated now because I think all the mailboxes pretty much are gone. But maybe there are some left. Anyway, this poem is called They Took the Mailbox Away on Cahuenga and Clinton. I know because I wasn't feeling right, decided to take a walk, figure things out, remember why I love the clouds. Found my rent check still in my purse, gave me a goal, a project I could complete. But when I got to the corner, it was gone. Just space in the place where the box had been, where I've deposited countless bills, birthday cards, where I once tossed a sticky, half-eaten ice cream dish. There was no garbage can in sight. I gave it some serious thought, but now realize the mess I made may have destroyed a young girl's last letter to her grandmother, stained a college application. What did admissions people think when it arrived with chocolate sprinkles stuck to the stamps? Worse yet, a love letter someone finally had the guts to send, smeared with butterscotch sauce, possibly obscuring the recipient's address, sender never knowing it was not received. When I saw the empty corner where the mailbox used to be, granted out of place on that isolated street, it hit me. The lives I ruined, the mailman's soiled hands. So it's interesting to me because years and years later, in my new book, What She Wants, I have a poem called Ode to the Phone Booths in New York City. So apparently I get very sentimental when they take these things away. So I have an ode to the mailboxes and now an ode to phone booths in New York City. And for anyone who's ever been to New York City, or certainly anyone who grew up in New York City will know in the 60s and 70s, phone booths were really important. They were an important part of the street art. So this is Ode to Phone Booths in New York City. We'd cram ourselves in after school. One more, just one more. Okay, you, our shoulders crushed, groping like idiots, cheeks smashed against the glass. One of us with a finger in the accordion door. We'd pour our dimes into the slot, call our mothers to say, "Dawn us for dinner," or Joey's to study, then off we'd go to Central Park. Sometimes it was just me and Melissa. Thunderstorms, humidity creeping into the booth. She'd sit on the seat, heavy phone book on a wire, swaying between us, while I made collect calls with a fake credit card to random people, the excitement killing us. Senior year, it'd be me alone, excusing myself from my parents' dinner table, running a brush through my hair, elevator down, making the call to my boyfriend, filthy, receiver tight in my hand, mouthpiece caked with someone else's spit, smelling like the inside of someone else's mouth. I'd hang up if his mother or sister answered. They couldn't know we were about to meet, walk into the dark opening of the park, find our spot below the American elms that lined the river, my heart pounding, fingertips laced with the sweat of strangers. So I have a book that's called I Wore This Dress Today for You, Mom. And it's a book about motherhood, being a mother, having a mother. And it's a very popular book for Mother's Day, that's for sure. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from this book. And one of them is called Different Mothers. You know, we often wish we had another kind of mother. Like you hear about your friend's mother and you think, oh, wow, I never had that. And I guess it's always that way. We don't really appreciate the mother that we have, maybe until we don't have her any longer. So this poem is called Different Mothers. I've read about the ones who garden, teach their daughters to cut a rose just above the thorns, so a fresh bud will pop up like toast in time for breakfast. These different mothers show their daughters how to plant tomato seeds in the damp earth, tingle when the first green fruit appears, and when they explode into deep red, pick them off the vine, slice them in their sunny kitchens. These are mothers whose daughters learn through the smells of lakes, weeds, pastry dough, have memories of lightning bugs in jars mothers have poked holes into. These are different mothers. I am not one. My mother didn't know about soil or earthworms. City mothers, we know about bus routes, restaurants, Broadway, the people on the 8th floor. Mine taught me to accessorize, bring the ideal hostess gift, have my keys in hand when I enter the building. I have no daughter, but my son can look anyone in the eye, tell them what he's thinking. We eat tomatoes from the grocery. Our roses are store-bought. Different mothers sound better. And I think about what might have been, calling to the birds, naming the stars, fingers locked together while hiking on hidden trails, cleaning homegrown mint before placing it in tea before bed. I'll flag a cab instead. So a lot of times, as all the poets out there listening know, a poem is about one thing, and then it's also about the other thing. And oftentimes, a poem is layered. So it begins one way and it ends in a different direction. So this poem is called Bottled Water. It's an older poem that's also from I Wore This Dress Today for You, Mom. Bottled water. I go to the corner liquor store for a bottle of water. Middle of a hectic day, must get out of the office, stop making decisions, quit obsessing. Does my blue skirt clash with my hot pink flats? Should I get my mother a caregiver or just put her in a home? And I pull open the glass refrigerator door, am confronted by brands, Arrowhead, Glitter, Geyser, Deer Park, Spring, Summer, Winter Water, and clearly the bosses of bottled water, real water, and smart water. How different will they taste? If I drink smart water, will I raise my IQ, but be less authentic? If I choose real water, will I no longer deny the truth, but will I attract confused, needy people who will take advantage of my realness by dumping their problems on me? And will I be too stupid to help them sort through their murky dilemmas? I take no chances. Buy them both. Sparkling smart, purified real, drain both bottles, look around to see, is anyone watching? I am now brilliantly hydrated. Both real and smart. My insides bubble with compassion and intelligence as I walk the streets with a new swagger, knowing the world is mine. So that poem, by the way, I'm especially proud of that poem because Garrison Keillor read that on the Writer's Almanac one day years ago. And a high school class in Michigan has a wonderful teacher, and she would play the poems every day from the Writer's Almanac. And she wrote me an email and she said, my class is having this very heated dispute about, is that poem funny or is it serious? And they wanted to know from you. So we had a conference call. I had a conference call with this honors English class in Michigan to discuss bottled water and talk about whether the poem was funny or serious. And it was one of the highlights of my entire life. So I'm going to go jump to another book, What She Wants, which is a book about limerence, which is the state of being addicted and obsessed with someone who may not necessarily return the obsession. And I think so many of us have been in that state at least once in our lives. It's an interesting place to be. And so my book is divided into the 4 stages of limerence. And the first one is one that we can all relate to, infatuation. And, even dogs can suffer from limerence. Anyone who has a dog will attest to that. The poem is called She'll Do Anything for Food. She'll do anything for food, the dog walker tells me. She speaks quietly, not wanting to insult her heavy-boned, one blue, one brown-eyed beast tugging at her leash. We did a doggy ancestor test, she confides. Discovered she's part wolf, part miniature poodle. Must be the poodle part, makes her so ravenous. Small creatures are ruthless feeders. Think of enraptured rats gnawing their way through orange trees, babies nursing, sucking so fiercely they can burst a nipple. Think of your heart, size of a throbbing fist, the part of you that will do anything for love. I'm going to bounce back to I wore this dress today for you, Mom. And I'm going to read the title poem. I wore this dress today for you, Mom. Breezy, floral, dancing with color, soft, silky flows as I walk. Easter Sunday, and you always like to get dressed. Go for brunch. Maybe there's a good movie playing somewhere. Wrong religion. We were not churchgoers, but New Yorkers who understood the value of a parade down Fifth Avenue, bonnets in lavender, powder blues, pinks, hues of spring, the hope it would bring. We had no religion, but we did have Noodle-Kugel, grandparents, dads who could fix fans, reach the china on the top shelf, carve the turkey. That time has passed. You were the last to go, Mom. And I still feel bad I never got dressed up for you like you wanted me to. I had things to do. But today in LA, hot, the way you liked it, those little birds you love to see, flitting from tree to tree, just saw one, a twig in its mouth, preparing a bed for its baby, might still be an egg. I wish you were here. I've got a closet filled with dresses. I need to show you. So here we are back in baseball season. And I wrote a baseball poem a while back that's also from I Wore This Dress Today for You, Mom. And people listening will know about how old this poem is because they'll remember Manny from the Dodgers. And I don't know how long ago that was now, 10 years? This poem is called Game Over. I squirted too much mustard on my hot dog, and now I can't eat it, I tell my friend at the game. That's why God made napkins, he tells me. Wipe it off. I tell him I knew God made mustard, but I didn't know he also made napkins. I tell him once the mustard gets soaked up by the bun, it's game over. Even napkins won't help. He's disturbed. I can see in his face he's mad I wasted a perfectly decent hot dog. And worse, now I'm doubting God. When did you stop believing in him? He asks me, his face twisted like the pretzel I'm about to put mustard on. Did I ever believe in God? Was God peeking through the window up there in Laurel Canyon when my son was conceived? Was he in my belly when they sliced it open so they could lift my baby out of his warm, private ocean? Was God in my son's hands when he pitched a perfect game at the Pan? My friend's still talking. I was an altar boy, he continues. You don't forget the Eucharist, wearing the crisp cassock, snuffing out candles as the priest consecrates bread and wine. You don't forget ringing the bells until someone you know dies. Then it's game over. He tells me these things, our shoulders touching as Manny hits deep into left field. The men on base run their hearts out. Thousands in the stands praying, please God, please get the run, win the game. As the mustard hardens on my cold dog, bun stiff, I slip it under my seat with God's blessing as the first man slides safely to home. I think that'll do it. What do you think, Harry?
Well, I think you gave a loving, imaginative, and tender reading, and I love your poems about your mother, and you're a mother, and I think it all goes back to the mother. And your poetry is all full of particulars, which I love, and I love the poem "Bottled Water" and the experience you went through, and the hot dog. So you got baseball, you got the mother, but you're just a fabulous poet. So we can talk for a little bit, if you would like. What is the essence of poetry to you? In other words, what is what does poetry come down to for you? Just in a simple way.
Well, there's the experience of writing it and the experience of reading it. So what it comes down to as a reader is looking for a line that you can hang on to, that lifts you, that changes you, that moves you, that you've never seen before in paper, that you've never heard before coming out of your mouth. It's the surprise of reading a great line, seeing something come together like a puzzle. As William Carlos Williams used to say, I think he said it once, but he said poetry, a poem is like a perfect machine. Everything fits perfectly. Every word has to be there for a reason. So I think as a reader, you can see that perfect machine, but you don't see it being constructed. You get to see the result of it, which means beautiful language, the right word, the sounds, the music, the line breaks. For a writer, it's sort of the reverse of that. For me, writing poetry is that moment in the day when nothing else matters but being in the zone and making that machine happen. And whether it's a first line that comes to you, like, she'll do anything for food. That happened. I took a walk during lunch and a woman was walking a dog and the dog started jumping on me and it was giant and was barking. And the woman looked at me and said, she'll do anything for food. And I thought, well, I hope eating me isn't part of what she'll do. But I thought, thank you for this, because it was a great prompt. And what poetry did for me then was give me the ability to run upstairs to my computer and just pour this out. She'll do anything for food, the dog walker said. And I didn't know where that was going to take me. It was going to suddenly take me to my heart, the size of a throbbing fist, that will do anything for love. So writing it is as much of a miracle as reading a great poem. That ability to be completely concentrated and have the words come through you. As Anne Sexton used to say, she doesn't write the poems, God speaks them to her. And I love that, because we can always blame God if people don't like our poems.
Well, Anne Sexton, I love her. And when she was in the institution, I believe her doctor's name was Dr. Martin, and she was always searching for meaning, searching for God. And Dr. Martin told her one time, your God is in your typewriter. And and then the other thing, which on a human level, not the poetry level, I agree with what you said about poetry being like a math equation. Everything has to fit together perfectly. In your poem about infatuation, as a human being, how did you come to terms with that? In other words, like, you could love somebody, in the movie, the one with From Here to Eternity, Montgomery Clift toward the end of the movie, after he had, not been treated good by the Army, and he told Donna Reed, the character, that he was going to re-up, and she said, why would you re-enlist the way the Army has treated you? And he said, just because you love something doesn't mean it has to love you back. And so as a person, how do you deal with that, and how do you reconcile it and transcend it and get over it?
I don't know that you ever do. You can transcend it temporarily, sort of in and out. I think that one of the things I discovered, writing what she wants, poems on obsession, desire, despair, euphoria, is the state of being in limerence, that state of being obsessed, can be as uplifting and as exciting as it can be draining and demoralizing. In other words, if something doesn't love you back, it can be upsetting for sure, but it also keeps you in a state of a hopefulness and a state of excitement. And I think that's why it's so much part of the human condition to be obsessed, to be infatuated, because that act in itself is an exciting act. when it suddenly is, when you realize it's not being returned, when it's depleting you, those of us who hopefully are not deeply in trouble can pull out of it, and move on. And the last section in the book is ecstatic release, which is that time when it's like, who cares anymore? I've moved on. And so that's an interesting part of limerence, ecstatic release. And I didn't make that term up. There's four parts of limerence, and that's the last one. So I love the idea of being infatuated and obsessed. I think that it's also an homage to poetry. We are obsessed with writing poetry. Otherwise, why would we do it? The poems do not love us back. They really don't. And sort of like the army, why do we keep going back to it? Because we don't have any choice. Those of us who write, we just find ourselves in that place, and it is a state of limerence.
I remember that the book, they made a movie out of it, The Only Game in Town. I knew the game was crooked, but it was the only game in town.
Yeah. Well, it's great. Noir, is all about obsession, isn't it? And the dark side, and not necessarily understanding why our motivations are what they are. But yeah.
You're just so brilliant, and you're just such a great imaginative writer, and you have such strength of narrative, and you're the clarity. You always have such great clarity too, which I love.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you.
We have 1 minute left before Lester comes on, and I know you're a teacher, and I may have asked you this question before. If I have, forgive me. But what would you say to a young woman who's sitting down to write her first poem for the first time to focus on?
Oh, don't focus on anything. Just let it come. Just greet it, just with open arms, and just whatever it tells you to do, just go with it, whether you're writing with your hand in a pen or you're sitting at a computer. Enjoy as it comes to you and it comes through you, because you're going to be editing it. You're going to be going back. Never, ever, ever edit as you're writing. Just let it come and enjoy that phase, because the other phases are going to be different where you start chipping away at it,
Well, I always love listening to you talk about poetry just as much as I do hearing you read your wonderful poetry. So thank you once again, Kim Dower. And now it's time for Lester Graves Lennon. Lester Graves Lennon was born and raised in New Rochelle, New York. He is the Poet Laureate Editor-in-Chief for Altadena 2024 to 2026. Since 2020, he has been the poetry editor for Rosebud magazine. He has published 3 books of poetry. His first book, The Upward Curve of Earth and Heavens, was published in 2001 and can be found in more than 50 public and university libraries, including the Los Angeles Public Library and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he received his BA in English. His most recent book, Lynchings, Postcards from America, was published in 2022. Lester has lived with his family in Altadena since 1992. Here's a wonderful poet, Lester Graves Lennon.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, Kim, for your reading. It was inspiring, and I am pleased to be here with you. I wanted to start, since we've just passed the 5-year anniversary of the COVID lockdown. This was a haiku I wrote. My wife and I would go out for walks daily, just as a way of, as one of the ways of getting through. So, morning walk with you in time of plague. Morning walk, no masks. We observe social distance. Sun and breeze do not. I'm just kind of wander for a while, and I was wandering one Saturday afternoon in Manhattan, and there was a movie theater and seemed kind of interesting, the movie, though I don't remember what it was now. And so I got online, and something you don't do a lot now, get online to go to movies, but I was online, and this is what happened. And this is from my first book, The Upward Curve of Earth and Heavens. Two bodies shimmering. Manhattan afternoon. The movie line not moving, stuck in lobby single file. A radiant, tall, dark ship, a woman moored in front of me, to date who doesn't deserve her. Harsh, hushed words rush one way. Off he sails. His absence leaving deeper harshness shushed by tightening lips, her briefly blinking tears that flush. I am compelled to offer quiet presence as comfort. I ease closer, bow to stern, mine hers. Our contours barely touch. Aware, she leans so slightly against me. In trilling stillness, we share sheltered brilliance. Two bodies shimmering in rare, hushed harmony. Doors open. He reappears. We release. I watch them flow from magic's closing port, grateful to her, stunned by our shining shared. And I wanted to read some father-daughter poems. The first one is when she was 3 days old. She's 31 now. And we adopted her. We flew to Washington, D.C., and the social worker delivered her to us when she was 3 days old in our hotel room. The living answer for our daughter on the day of her bat mitzvah. When you were 3 days old, new papers signed, your social worker left the hospital, delivered you to the expectant hotel suite. Smiling, she placed you in my arms, saying, "Here is your daughter," and left us alone. Balancing you, I grabbed my book, traversed the living room, reading aloud Walt Whitman's Song of Myself that sings to all ourselves. 7 months later, I read you Ginsberg's Howl, so you would feel the words, feel the beat's courage, raging from despair, raging into art. A ritual evolved, sitting next to you, reading you to sleep, calls out the stage where ancient Chinese poets may speak of exiles, rain, or love as blossoms, where Yeats' loud swans still circle from Cool Park, their wing beats measuring the poet's count. Often the final poem is one of longing. Antonio Machado's Rainbow at Night. His last lines hold a question posed as plea. O Lord, who gives us sight, and who sees souls? Tell us if one day all will see your face. Watching you dream, I see the living answer. And now I'm going to move about 16 years later, when our daughter is getting ready to go to college. And I wrote a series of letters to her, and I'll read two of them. Letter number 1 to my college-bound daughter. I could tell you what not to do by telling you what I have done, but that would be telling much too much, much too soon. Best you learn from what you have done best. Best I teach by not, and just retell your first performance as preschool spring princess, one of 6, dancing on their classroom court, turning as beaming cameras captured skirts, swirling with colors flowing when yours dropped. In step, you sweeped it, swooped it, back in place, head high. And this is letter number 4. I want to preach, but I have no religion except the breathing grace of poetry to beat my text to form to see you off, leaving your desk too clean, your bed too neat, your shelves too tight, with books well read, as you step to the life that best records your soul. Your English teacher wrote, you have the power of Yeats. Of course, you've heard him all your life. No better bass to have as your voice grows. From this point forward, William Butler Yeats is God, I wrote in his collected works my sophomore year. T.S. Eliot was his first angel. Robert Lowell ruled my junior year. Pablo Neruda blossomed quickly, held highest place until I saw the gods of poetry have many thrones in many mansions, always forming rooms. Somewhere a chair begins to spell your name. This is from my second book, My Father Was a Poet. And there are a series of poems here where the father, who was blind, wrote poetry, and no one knew that he wrote poetry. And when he died, the son found these papers that were in Braille. He had them translated, realized they were poems, took 10 of them, and then wrote an answer to each. So this is a set, just one by the father and then the response by the son. The father, part 7, King. King's call to history was clear. Washington's march demanded all, colored and white, father and son. My wife feared liquored Negro mobs would rise to torch the Capitol, like Harlem back in 42. That was a time when I could see the storefronts faded to be fuel. I walked those streets to lower heat, dodging the misfired Molotovs, when young men became hooligans and crowds gave speech to buildings' flames. DC was not those Harlem nights. This pressing heat pressed for King's voice. Church folk had bused to Bethlehem. My son will not forget, he heard, a man who in a better world would stand to speak as president. The Son, Part 7, Mr. President. Bethesda Baptist Church chartered 2 buses. We made our only father and son journey. My mother's caution did not caution him. He grabbed my arm and off we went to see a sea neither of us had ever seen. Loudly, as always, he was asking questions. Are there more colored folks than white? Yes, Daddy. Are black and white prayer birds flying with us? That's what he called the priests and nuns. They are. You say more than 2 football fields to the stage and packed? Yes, and a lot more behind us. He smiled. I told your mother, King knows Negroes. The heat kept ringing out its entrance fees. Mahalia's song built expectations hum. The rabbi's speech closed. King began his sermon. He beat each word to verse, each verse to chapter, lifting the crowd to choir of memory. The day transfixed in history, its echoes spangling the ice-lined mall 5 decades later, the summer's sweat now frost and winter's bite. As masses form one congregation, hearing the gospel-steepened alto of Aretha, preparing for the man who walks on votes from dream into undreamed reality. Bundled in willing layers, I give witness. A blind man slips on ice. He's near my age, my father's age, when I stood next to him, sharing the future's call we would not share. I think of how he'd smile when first we hear a colored man called Mr. President. And I'm going to move from one president to another. This is from my last book, Lynchings, Postcards from America. And it was written 5 years ago, a little bit longer. The 45th president of the United States. I say it was written 5 years, but it could have been written yesterday. And it begins with an epigraph. The president has blood on his hands. Boston Globe editorial, March 30th, 2020. Beautiful. Often he says, beautiful. Horror. Each day with him we see new horror. Blood stains on his hands. We see the blood stains stain where he touches. Everywhere the stain. His golden sewer voice punching out his guttural gutter breaths, praising his gutter. Nasty. The women he attacks are nasty. Losers, the men he fights, always weak losers. Virus denied, he makes undenied virus. Spitting out serpents, he climbs his cross, spitting old venoms tailored for old fears. The old preacher pronouncing damnation. He preaches protection. Only him for protection against fake news, against false facts, against hoaxes, the lying deep state's vicious hoaxes. Shame. He has children caged. He has no shame. Horror. We live and die with him, our horror. Beautiful. His last hour becomes our beautiful. And I wanted to read one of the poems from the title section of this book. There was a time when photographs of lynchings were mailed as postcards. And this entire section consists of many of those postcards or those pictures that were sold as souvenirs at lynchings. So I'll read one. Unknown, circa 1908. Photographer unknown. Unknown, hung body, exact date unknown. Black body, once man hunted because black. Because something black had to die. Because light pole was there somewhere where rail yard light was needed for correct work. Where light was useful for checking tightening noose, for useless coon last used uselessly as next dead coon, properly hoisted to see properly. Rope strung high over light pole's lone arm. Rope stretching neck tautly, thrusting chin up, stretching head skyward, body part of pole. Wool head blurry in camera's lens, railroad cars blurred. Waiting cart, horseless below body, waiting like guideless ferry traveling to God, like coat, trousers, white shirt wasting on corpse, coat useless to impress, shined shoes, slow shoes, useless, all caught, all hung, all seen, all left by all unknown, who died unknown, somewhere unknown. Well, I have 3 poems left, so I actually have time to do one more of these lynching photographs. Photograph of lynching pre-1915, place and photographer unknown. After Robert Johnson's hellhound on my trail. There's a hellhound on his trail. Hellhound. There's a hellhound on his trail. On his trail, a pack of hounds hunting him, fleeing their pack. Found by hounds, found by men, by camera found. Camera sees body slumped to its knees. Camera sees what should not be seen, what must be seen. Murder, eye socket, bullet blackened, murder. Wounds where ear once heard hellhounds chasing. Wounds from bullets hunting groin, close range. Wounds from bullets exploding mouth to blood blooms. Bullets found target, leather bound to pine trunk. Found bound hands useless to prevent its lead hounds. pounding of helpless flesh tethered for hounding. Kneeling, once black man looks bound black man kneeling. Dark brown head looks left, lost, sees something dark. Low scrub plains, endless show plantation low. Background, two white men sit in carriage. Background, well-dressed, erect, ensuring all goes well. And I would like to close. I mean, we know of the conflagration in Altadena and the Palisades. And there are two poems I have written about the fire. We had Christmas dinner at friend's house across the street. The cruelty of the fire, in part, was it was so somewhat quixotic. You never knew what was going to make it and what house was not. Our friend's house did not make it. Something coming. All of it. All that's seen and unseen, all has weight. Each ash, each scorched page, charred thought has loss. There is nothing weightless. All counts loss. Always with us, accepted or not. Always demanding something closely held. Demanding our ownership of what's no longer ours. Whose lending library stands intact? Whose books, soot-free, wait curbside, silent as books, valiant as witnesses called to be valiant against the ruins behind them, against rubble haphazardly, rising as rubble. Don't search unmasked, ungloved. All is undone. Ash-grayed trees bend above home, claimed by ash, across from our spared home. We laugh across their Christmas table longer than planned. Their friendship too strong to leave too soon. Did friendship sense change? Our hostess said, stay. Did she sense something hard coming? Something coming? Something. And now I will end as I started with a haiku. And the haiku is titled Altadena Chimneys. Homesteads in ashes. Fire next time, road mountain winds. Proud chimneys still stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Lester, for such an exalting reading. There's harmony, grace, erudition, beauty, suffering, empathy in your poetry, a sacredness even, deeply moving to me. So thank you very much. I want to just ask you one question and then we'll bring Kim on. When did you write your first poem?
I was 7 years old. I wrote it in elementary school. I think I was in third grade, and it was published in the that's the word I'll use. It was published in the school spring newsletter.
Well, you started young. Kim, why don't you come on, and why don't each one of you say something about the other's poetry. We have several minutes left, 3 minutes left. Lester, why don't, since you just finished, say something about Kim's poetry, and then Kim on Lester's poetry, please.
Well, I love the location. I mean, I can relate to the Dodgers. I can relate to Manny. I love that, and the challenge of dealing with older parents, especially more recently when dealing with my mother-in-law and my daughter had my wife had very similar questions to ones that you posed. You know, are you going to go into a nursing home? Or are you going to stay at home? You know, those are, you know, that's real. That's gritty, and you turn those questions into poetry, which is what we do with questions. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, well, I too, they say that we write poetry to understand the inexplicable. And I think that you do the same thing in a different way. I mean, mine are more pop culture-ish and more readily accessible places that we can identify with. But your poems about the photographs of lynchings, that's not only the subject matter is horrific, the fact that you write about that in a way, it seems to me, to try to understand the inexplicable, but it's a fascinating subject to pick to write poems. And the fact that they use these photos as postcards, your poems are almost postcards talking to those postcards or talking to that time, you know. So there's that really interesting element, and we do all use poetry to try to understand what makes no sense. I love the series of the letters to your daughter. I have written a poem called Letter to My Son, which people relate to, and yours to your daughter, there's just a poignance and a love, and also it's personal, and yet we can all relate to it, which is what makes a good poem. You can feel the heart in it, yet we don't have to know you to feel it for ourselves, you know, and that's very special. Also, listen, my kids lost their home in Altadena, burned to the ground, and it's been a very painful 3 months. I mean, this is something none of us will ever get over, right? A beautiful community, and yeah. So I appreciate your poems about the fire. I don't know that I'll ever be able to write anything. I just, you know, watching their faces as they found out the house was gone is, how can we write about that? I don't know, but I love the poem about your friends and the Christmas dinner, because the idea that was just a couple of weeks before this happened. And yet the speaker in the poem senses, you know, is the friendship, is something going on? Is this going to be over? You know, how we can sense a finality of something. And of course you didn't know then, but to write the poem in that way, to explain the present is really, I really appreciated that.
Thank you both, Kim Dower and Lester Graves Lennon. This has just been an exhilarating, sacred reading. I love the father-daughter poems and the motherhood poems and the father, you know, it all goes back to our mother and father. And so thank you once again for a marvelous reading, Kim Dower and Lester Graves Lennon. Our next Tuesday readers are two fabulous ones, Richard Modiano, LA, Puma Pearl, New York City.